Well, speaking of Mike from the world, he's ready. Are you serious? I hope we can hear him. Mike from around the world.
Pastor Paul, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Hang on a second. Let me, what am I doing? 1 second, Mike. Wait.
Reconnect that whole white cable.
Okay. Okay. Mike?
All right, good to go?
Good to go. Give me a little more volume, Izzy. All right. Mike from around the world, how are you doing this evening?
Well, doing great. Busy. Doing great, though.
All right, Mike. Well, Mike, megaquake. New Zealand's shaking and quaking. 7.3, 7.4, 8.1. Tsunami waves. What's going on, Mike? What's going on?
Yeah, well, I think we have some magma plumes that are starting to make their way around the globe here. New Zealand, by the way, is an indication of Indonesia's and Australia's fragility, meaning Australia and, remember that volcano I was talking about north of Australia, right out there in the water, right below Papua New Guinea?
Yes.
They're going to have a problem out in that area. Also, it doesn't look good for Japan. So
Why?
that area.
Whoa. Why, Mike? I got a son and daughter-in-law and a couple grandkids there. Why doesn't it look good?
Well, when you're looking at plate tectonics, Japan and New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, all those places, Vietnam are tied together. So when you have magma activity, large-scale magma activity, which is happening in New Zealand, you naturally have a bit of structural issues going on in Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if Japan had a major quake.
Well, they're due. I mean, we had that 9.1 back on 3/11/11, so it's been 10 years ago, almost to the day. Matter of fact, next Thursday night when you come on to be with us will be exactly 10 years ago anniversary since that Fukushima earthquake. And are you talking about a quake something like that, maybe?
Yeah, something pretty big, probably south. A little bit at the origination point, epicenter will be south of Japan, because they have their collapsing issues under the ocean there in Japan, the Philippine Sea. Lots of collapses taking place because magma, the Earth is beginning to distort and warp due to some of the internal pressures. They're just enormous. Last week we talked about this same thing, and Earth is, keeping pace with these changes.
Now, you did. You talked about these exact same things. You said these are the things that are coming. And listen, Mike, this is what's happened since you was on the air last Thursday. 18,000 earthquakes in Iceland. 6,000 earthquakes, they're all smaller, in Mount Hood in Portland, Oregon, the last 48 hours. Mount Etna has completely erupted, blown its top off of it in Italy. Antarctica, an iceberg broke off the size of New York City. And 3 megaquakes in New Zealand, just to name a few issues since you were on with us last Thursday. Is this part of... I have to ask this. I know the core of the Earth's heating up. I know you've talked about crustal displacement. I know there's atmospheric compression. Are we looking at, though, Planet X, Nibiru, the binary system, the dwarf star, whatever they want to call it out there? Is it approaching faster than we thought? Is this shaking us now? Is there a gravitational pull? What's going on, Mike?
Well, we're having lots of energy come into our solar system, of course. Now, Pastor Paul, in a binary system, and this is what some of the graphics are going to be for. I'm trying to see if I can get an animation also, because the binary systems work with a pendulum mathematical formula. If you can imagine a pendulum swinging as it hits the bottom, right? As a pendulum hits dead right there at the bottom. It's at its maximum speed. As it goes back up, it slows down, right? Then it goes back down to the bottom and it speeds up. That's where its maximum speed is, right there at the bottom in the pendulum formula. Binary systems work the same way, each star being that max Q for the other star. So as another star comes into our star, the sun, it speeds up. It speeds up as the two stars come together, they speed up. So that means they start out kind of slow, but as they come in, they speed up. It's exponential speed. It's very fast. And when they start crossing each other, when they hit that point where they cross each other, you're looking at enormous speeds that'll start to rip us apart, just tear everything up. This is why I believe that Earth is going to lose its orbit.
Whoa! Whoa, whoa, whoa! Wait a minute. Wait a minute, Mike. Time out. And when the Earth loses its orbit, we just go flying into oblivion.
Well, it'll take a while before the Earth recovers its orbit again, but we will tumble, so to speak. Our forces are going to be thrown off. All the forces that are stable right now, they're not going to be stable. They just won't be stable.
Is that part of the pole shift, Mike, in Isaiah 24:1?
Well, that likely is part of it. It will just cause. They've observed this in a few systems, binary systems. The planets do not carry their original orbits once the second star passes. They just don't. It takes a while, and they haven't observed recovery yet. So after this thing passes, if we're in a binary system, we can expect for Earth and some of the other planets to be thrown out of orbit. Now, they've done some mathematical models of some of the other planets dealing with their orbits around the sun. If you were to put our system with a binary system, right backwards in time, it works out perfectly mathematically where everything is right now, works out perfect. And given some of what people wrote, for example, Jupiter being so huge in our skies, right? That would take, I think that's more of an optical effect, but it still gives insight that things were different back then. The radiation, solar influences upon the Earth, certain gases that were in our atmosphere, they were far different back then than they are now. Oxygen content, nitrogen content, all these things were different. Now, if in the Bible, when it says the Earth will be like a drunkard, right?
Right. Isaiah 20.
How could a person perceive that? How could a person perceive that from Earth? That means the stars are going to immediately be out of position, meaning we'll be shaking, right? Meaning that the Earth is going to shake or wobble like that. Now, it's already in a double wobble right now, and that wobble is increasing. But we have some external forces which, well, they do make up for perturbations of probes that have been sent out to space for a long time. Certain factors they have to compensate for. Recently, SpaceX had to do the same thing. Everybody has to compensate once they start going out to a specific distance outside of Earth, because there is a pull. As soon as you hit a specific spot out there or get a specific distance away from the Earth, there is a strong pull away from the sun. It's not whatever it is has a notable pull on all objects, but it's not the sun.
But it's got to be bigger than the sun if it has the ability to pull objects away from their solar, their orbit around the sun. It's got to be bigger.
What is believed is that we travel, we're always traveling, so we have something called inertia, right? Whatever's in motion tends to stay in motion. It tends to stay in motion. So with inertia, once you get outside of the Earth's influences, you immediately are affected by external influences. That inertia is left over from the last passage and the movements of the Earth. So, but it's lopsided. We have more inertia on one side than the other. Plus, the sun's gravitational pull should have more of an effect, at least over 80% of an effect, keeping the planets in their positions. But that's not true, because the calculation for mass does not, it just doesn't calculate with the Earth. Given the rotation of the Earth and all the other planets, it doesn't match up. The mathematics only work with a binary system.
Folks, Mike Around the World's with us tonight. We're talking about these three major megaquakes, 7.3, 7.4, and then 8.1 hit New Zealand. And the fact that we're watching now, what's under Iceland? Mike, why in the world has Iceland got 18,000 small earthquakes in it in the last...
Ancient volcano. They have a very ancient volcano. And the last time, in fact, there's one in Greenland and there's one in Iceland. Now, the Iceland's volcano, when it erupted, it was said to leave spider webs all over the place, but they were, in fact, glass, small little glass, looked like glass threads. And it's a pretty big volcano sitting under Iceland. The dome of Iceland is becoming larger. Some of the holes that were solid, they've been evacuated. And so, in other words, they're emptying out. Not to mention, up north in Greenland seas, when you get up near past the Norwegian Sea, up in that area, there are telltale signs that Greenland will fracture. It's going to fracture. And when it does, you're looking at a pretty big release of magma. It's almost like a wall under the ground in Iceland. If that wall breaks, all that magma is going to pour down into the North Atlantic, underneath the crust of the Earth into the Atlantic. Once this takes place, you're looking at a plate disruption event that we've never seen before, because from the American plate, the African plate, Indian plate, Pacific plate, all these different plates, they're going to start to shift due to all the pressure of the American plate and Eurasian plate. Both those plates are going to start to shift, which will cause pressure on several other plates at the same time. That will cause somewhat of an uptick, a real uptick in earthquakes. So we're going to see some physical things. One of the physical things people can unfortunately look forward to is as the magma rises to the surface and it creates new holes and ports, our highways are going to be destroyed. They're going to be destroyed because the ground is beginning to heat. This summer, people are going to find out that it's not a joke, that it's a very serious issue. And it's very unfortunate that a lot of people will not pay attention.
What do you mean? What's going to happen this summer?
When the heat from the magma is going to cause large-scale problems with the surface temperatures, that will in turn start to mess up our highways in a big way. Earthquakes will likely double during the summer months.
Whoa!
They'll double. In other words, instead of having, 51 4.5s, we may see, 100, 200. You're going to see a notable uptick in that activity. This with structural issues, of course, with our infrastructure from weather itself. Because there's a big difference between climate change and atmospheric changes, which drive weather phenomena. There's a big difference in that. Climate change is one thing, but when you have weather patterns being directly affected by high altitude changes in the upper atmospheres, that's a bad problem. Here's an example. They were sending up weather probes. These weather probes went up in altitude, and they began to cool down. Of course, it's colder as you go up. As soon as they capped one of the atmosphere caps, the distance and the altitude, it warmed up about 22 degrees, and then it cooled down again. Then it warmed up again. As this balloon was going up, right, it was reporting some weird phenomena in the atmosphere. Now, it's a known fact that once you go up in altitude, once you hit the shells of each atmospheric breakpoint, the temperature changes, but not as much as it is now. And a compression event of sorts is most certainly taking place, and that's only going to exacerbate the weather phenomenon.
Mike, we're looking at the map right now, and of course there's been 3 mega quakes, 7.3, 7.4, 8.1. Now, since the 8.1 hit this afternoon, just quickly, 5.7, 5.5, 6.1, 5.6, 5.1, 5.1, 5.3, 5.5, 5.0, 5.8, 5.2, 5.8, 5.4, 5.6, 5.4, 6.2, 5.5, 5.6, 5.1, 5.2, 5.6, 5.9, 5.2, 5.2, 5.6, 5.0, 4.9, 5.3, 5.3, 5.2, 5.1, 5.8, 5.3, 5.4. Aftershocks in New Zealand. That's just since the third mega quake. Mike, do you think there will be a fourth quake over 7 that's going to hit there? And oh, by the way, Vanuatu too. You've got the Loyalty Islands down in that area. You know, the tsunami threats. Is there more to come in this area?
Yeah. Also, keep your eye on the Nazca Plate.
Where's that at on the map here?
That's right, right to the left of South America. Keep your eye on that plate. That's what right South there. America sits on. Nazca Plate is south of us. Yeah, it's
right where do you see west. You see where my cursor's going right along the ridge there? Would that be it?
I can't.
You can't see.
I can't see your video.
Okay,
no, I can't
okay, but I'm sure it is.
I'll go by memory. Okay. I'll say it's to the left of South America.
Yep.
That's where it is.
Yep.
And keep your eyes on the South American Nazca Plate. Keep your eyes on that, and of course the South American Plate, but more the Nazca Plate, because if we start to have activity in the Nazca Plate, it's going to upset the Coast Plate. Now that is a trigger plate for the west coast of the USA. The Coast Plate is a trigger point for the United States of America. That's a trigger plate. And right now that pressure is so incredibly high. The tensions are incredibly high. And despite what anybody would say, unfortunately, they're going to have to endure a bit of fear regarding that also.
Now, look again, I'm looking at west coast of the United States. Again, we got a ton of activity. It seems like it's every day now, and that's right along that west coast plate there. I mean, obviously you got the San Andreas fault line. This leads you right on up to the what's called the Cascadia subduction zone. That entire coast of California, all the way down the coast of Mexico. That's a volatile area, and you've mentioned many times that San Diego could wind up literally lifting up 45-degree angle and dumping the entire city into the Pacific Ocean, and that's such a mind-boggling. That's just mind-boggling to anybody to comprehend. And you still hold to that prediction?
Oh yeah. Because it's going to begin down in the Coast Plate, and once that Coast Plate is disrupted, we'll know it is disrupted by volcanic activity in South America as it continues to rise. All the way up into Mexico. When that takes place, it's only going to be a very small window of time before California is really shaken. And by the way, these plates, you have to keep in mind, the Earth is not our continents are not floating. Earth is solid. It has a solid crust around it. They kind of mess people up when they talk about Pangea, one big continent. That has to, can I just say this freely? That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Because Earth is solid, right?
Right.
And when you have molten rock underneath that's always thrusting upward, of course you're going to have the land masses change their shape, or the coastlines of the, or not coastlines, but where the magma cools and comes up, it's going to have an upthrust. It's going to cause these continents to kind of grow where they are, right? They didn't just, kind of fall into a different location. That's ridiculous. Earth is solid. Earth, the continents do not float. Earth is solid. So a lot of people, if you take the water away, the Earth is solid. It is a solid structure. And it's unfortunate that people believe in that, because they'll never figure out just how simple these plate tectonics actually work together. It's almost like they purposely complicate these simple things so that nobody can actually forecast anything for themselves. It really is a shame, but this idea of Pangea and all this and the other is nonsense. For example, the government knows there was a water canopy over the earth a long time ago. They know this through what they have found, but they refuse to educate people. There's a lot they refuse to educate people on, but it's
well. Is that before was the water canopy over the earth? Was that before the flood? I mean, why does the Pope just throw this out there? But the Pope here just this week said, well, look, there was a flood, but that's historically accurate. But the story of Noah and the ark and the 2x2 and all that's kind of a mythical tale.
Oh, boy. See, they know better, Pastor Paul. Listen, they had a worldwide flood. And then after that flood, right, after the flood, they had another flood. It did not flood the entire earth, but it began to flood several regions of the earth. And this is how we have great disbursement of water right now. When the water receded the first time, it began to evaporate in certain areas, right? All the Indian tribes, all the Native American tribes, in North America, some of the tribes in South America, some of the indigenous folks in Russia, so on and so on, they wrote about large storms that came after the global flood, right? After the global flood, and how it would flood lands. Egypt was flooded after Noah was, that happening with Noah. So, but if you don't know that fact, if you don't know about the floods after the Great Flood, right, you're going to think, here's what people believe. Well, the flood came, Noah was saved, but a lot of other people were saved too. That's what people believe, because they're not giving account of these other flood times that took place after the massive flood.
Mike, let's talk about something else that's going on right now, and that is, I want to talk about Mount Hood in a minute, but first of all, Antarctica. An iceberg the size of New York City broke off this week, okay? What's going on, Mike? This is huge. So what's the cause? Magma moving, core of the earth heating up, global warming, Al Gore, CERN. What's going on, Mike?
You ready? It's very simple.
Yep.
Here it is. You ready?
Yep.
Now, no matter what the temperature is on the surface of the earth, if the sun shines on it, right, and the radiation penetrates the atmosphere like it does, it's going to cause a melting effect, right? Okay. This is why in a lot of areas now people observe this phenomenon. About 30 years ago, if it was 25 degrees outside or something like that, everything was ice, correct? Nothing melted. But not so. If it's 25 degrees and the sun comes out, the ice is going to melt. It's still 25 degrees outside, but the radiation is so intense now that it melts surface ice that quick. That quick it melts surface ice. A long time ago, that never happened. So now the sun's intensive rays are going right through the atmosphere. We have less and less coverage, and it's melting the ice. It's as simple as that. We have temperature sustainment in certain areas. So it's not global warming in this climate change issue is 100% out of whack. It really is out of whack. It's not, the causes of it is very foolish. It's just very foolish. One volcano, this volcano that went off the other day.
Yeah,
right?
Mount Etna. Mount Etna.
More carbon than we put off in, I believe they said it was 172 years or 175 years. It would take us 175 years running all cars at full capacity to put off the carbon that volcano did in about an hour, right? So we know you can take humanity out of the equation.
Right.
And the Earth has been here a long time. It didn't blow up or anything.
No.
It's not like Mars or anything. It's still here. It knows how to handle or balance itself naturally. God made it that way, right? It has mechanisms in there. It can balance itself. But, that's one of those political things.
But think about it, though, Mike. Think about it. You're right. Okay, one volcano, Mount Etna's explosion, is worth 175 years of every smokestack and every exhaust fan on. There was 44 different volcanoes erupted last year on the Earth. Okay? So we got to take, this is stupid. I mean, I mean, listen, this whole man-made global warming is a sham, and it's affecting everybody's livelihood because of all these bureaucracy and all of this save the planet kind of stuff. It's, it's crazy that we're going through this, Mike.
It really is. It really is. It most certainly is. And they also know that ocean life can neutralize carbon emissions in the atmosphere. In fact, we had back in 2002, we had an ozone problem, right? Bad one. We had a bad one, but somehow it repaired itself. It didn't come from everybody's, they didn't use spray paint anymore. That's not why it was repaired. The atmosphere can naturally repair itself because it's spherical, right? It's a big circle. And so you have forces that do their thing. The sun is constantly rejuvenating the earth, right? It charges the earth. It increases its forcing mission, which repairs the atmosphere. What we're having now is solar system wide. It's happening to every single planet out there. But what they ought to do is start pulling data from Mars. Since we have probes on Mars, do a side-by-side comparison of the emission changes on both planets. Now, we don't have a huge civilization on Mars.
There's no man up there that we know of.
Counterparts on Mars, right?
Yeah.
Not that we know of.
Not that we know of.
And the rest of the planets, likewise. For example, Neptune, Jupiter, Saturn, all these planets that we have looked into optically to see what the composition of the gases are, all of them are going through changes. Venus right now is 400 degrees hotter than it was last year. This year than it was last year. Last year it was 600 degrees hotter than it was before. And it fluctuates like that, but it's getting higher and higher and higher and higher. So, what gives here? And while they have people trying to cut back on carbon, right? What that really is, it's not a bad idea if you think about it, but it really is a controlled mechanism for humanity. It really is another way to make an excuse for what they're doing.
Mike Around the World's with us, folks, tonight. I want to welcome all 7,000 of you joining us tonight live. And let me just say real fast right now, is Mike is going to be one of our key speakers for April 23rd, 24th. This is going to be a webinar you can't miss. It's called Climate Chaos. You think it's a good timing for this one? April 23rd, 24th, Mike from Around the World is going to be bringing us charts, graphs, images, maybe even some animation. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah.
And also Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle's going to be speaking about weather modification. And also we're going to hear from Gil Brizard and his update on, he says Planet X is closer than we were originally anticipating, and that's why the effects on the Earth and the entire solar system is rapidly changing. And then, of course, there's Shepard Ambellis, the award-winning journalist, who says the reason that this whole global reset and plandemic, whatever you want to call it's going on, is really the world leaders are preparing for the arrival or the magnitude changes of the Earth due to Planet X as it whizzes by the edges of our solar system. Now, that's just some of the speakers. I'm going to be in there telling you, tying it all into the Bible. We've got more speakers coming. Please, you can get your ticket ordered tonight. Tara and Robomom and them that just threw it up in the chat room there. Get your ticket for Climate Chaos. You can go to my website right now, and it's right on the banner. It's the first thing that pops up on the banner. Just click that banner. Just click it. It'll take you and get the ticket, okay? Mike, let me ask you a question here. Just off the subject. We're going to come back to the chaos of the moment. But a cylinder, some kind of a weird cylinder flying by that had the ability to kind of slow down and then it quickly accelerate, went right in front of American airline pilot between New Mexico and Arizona, almost 3 years to the day that this happened once before. It's shocking. They're saying it's a UFO or some kind of aerial phenomenon. It showed up on the radar screens. There's no denying it. What is going on? And can you help us understand what this is that these pilots are experiencing out there?
Sure, it's not us. That's not who it is, because cylinders have been around since the 1700s. They've been seeing these things since the 1700s in the skies. So it's not some sort of a cruise missile or something like that. Not to mention, nothing is permitted to get that close to any of our air traffic, right? We spend trillions of dollars on stealth technology. We do, which means, and we spend a lot of money on drones, or the drone highway, which means we have a print for everything in the air. Even birds show up on some of the new technologies that we have for tracking aircraft. Birds do. If a part falls off an aircraft that's quite small, smaller than your hand, it will show up on some of the tracking systems. Air Force Command will certainly pick it up. Nothing is permitted to fly close to aircraft within 80 milliseconds of an object, right, near an aircraft. They can both pick it up, tag it. They can also zoom in and track it within 80 milliseconds. They can do all of this from satellites, which means they can get about, it's comparable being about a foot away from it. These objects, when they try to track them by satellites, they cause distortion in the optics. They're also, the aircraft itself, no object that passes an aircraft leaves anything going that fast, by the way. Past an aircraft, it's going to have some type of turbulence behind it. So these aircraft, they go right through it like it's no big deal. You can't do that with another aircraft. So we know it's not ours, right? We use things with propulsion. We also have, well, let's call them ion systems, which they don't really use normal propulsion. They are ours, but you can actually see those. They kind of look like a blur in the corner of your eye. Another word for those are observation platforms. They're going to get mad at that one, but that's precisely what they are. And that's our stuff. So if you're ever standing outside, you kind of thought you saw a blur over to your right side, but you see nothing, it was probably an observation platform. Those are ours. They're very real, and they're extremely fast. But they use a type technology that just doesn't operate like these cylindrical objects. Because the same day that happened, that same cylinder was spotted at several different places. By the way, Pastor Paul, one day, because of this topic, and because hopefully all of us are Christians, one day we're going to have to tackle that subject. Really tackle that subject so that people are actually prepared, because there seems to be an issue with believers. They believe in Christ, but all too often we don't believe the things of Christ, nor do we take that subject of angels seriously. And so, but one day all of us are going to have to deal with an environment very soon, and we won't be able to, it's very difficult to discern them. It is. If the Bible warns us to entertain, it says be careful to entertain strangers because we entertain strangers because we entertain angels unaware. If it says be careful, right? Right. It's more of a caution and advisement to let us know, hey, your discernment may not always work against these things. You may not know what you're entertaining. And that word entertain means conversation-wise or something like that. It doesn't mean, give them a song and dance. That's not what it means. To entertain something means you're in proximity to it. It's an encounter. So you're saying we're going to have encounters, and some of these encounters are going to be angelic. And you can't discern them. And they're not, because imagine a person not knowing is scared to death of something God has sent. Right? Yeah. And then they embrace, because I'll tell everybody right now, Hollywood's got you messed up, so don't educate yourself by Hollywood. Satan normally makes beautiful things. He does. And evil normally embraces you. Those things of the Lord can sometimes be quite ugly. It's the opposite way around. They can be fearful looking and very ugly. But if it's one thing I know for a fact, now this is going to sound crazy, but I know this for a fact. Everything sent from our Father will let you know it's from the Father. And it may tell you to stay away. Don't come near. Anything of Satan is very seductive. And so these things have already rearranged man's concepts and has warped the minds of so many. It is always said that where they are, hatred rises. Right? We have a problem in America.
All right, now, Mike, that's leading me into another level here, another area. And Heidi's been doing some studying on this, and she's actually going to be doing a Patreon on it tomorrow, because tomorrow, Pope of Rome will be in Iraq, and he's going to a location there that is one of the ancient kind of like pyramids. I forgot what they call them. They're not called pyramids. They start with a Z.
Ziggurat?
Yes. And there's 25 of them between Iran and Iraq.
Which one's he going to?
He's going to the one that's on the U.S. Air Base in Iraq. What's that? Yeah, it's in Ur. Yeah. It's in Ur, Mike. It's in Ur.
You know they're dedicated, right?
Wait. It's in Ur, which Ur is in the Bible. So this location is where the Sumerian texts were found, where the ancient Sumerian kings were. It's also in the Bible, the city of Ur. So that location was considered a very sacred, a very some type of a portal. For some reason, the United States.
Pastor,
can you tell us why in the world? What's going on here?
That's where it's called the young men of Dilmun will come from Ur. We will know that better as the army of Gog Magog.
What?
Whoa! It is said that the army of Gog Magog, right, is bound within the earth.
Yes.
When they are let loose, they will cover the earth like locusts. This is what's said of them. They'll cover the earth like locusts. They are immune to any kind of weapons or firepower, and they devour everything in their path.
What do you call this? The young men of what?
Young men of Dilmun. They're spoken of. There's an actual prophecy in the Middle East, a few of them, but they are the young men of Dilmun. It was said that during creation.
Is this among Sumerian tablets?
No, this supersedes some of the ignorant Sumerian tablets. I call them ignorant because, Pastor Paul, to be honest with you, a lot of the information about the Sumerians is somewhat mixed up and fabricated.
Okay, I understand. Right? Yes, I understand.
I can tell you this: biblical knowledge, as it turns out, certainly in my life, because I think I've read everything. Biblical knowledge is such a blessing because it supersedes all of this nonsense stuff that people have planted so many thousands of years ago. There's a tactic of ancient cities with their information. They used to protect their libraries. You know what they would do? They would have false information that others could come in and steal, and they would keep the valuable stuff.
Yep.
And so they did this all the time. And when you're dealing with the Anunnaki, which means those who from the heavens came, that's what everybody thinks it means, right?
Right.
But the true story is this, and it's so funny because Jesus spoke about the Samaritans, right? He kept saying stuff about the Samaritans. But even in the Bible, it says something else about the Samaritans. In their culture, first of all, those ones that came from the heavens to here, they were not called the Anunnaki. That's not what they were called. And they told the people of Samaria that their creator had bound them here. They bound them here.
Yeah.
They did not create mankind.
No.
They manipulated mankind. They wanted to make a warrior class of human beings that would do their will. Somehow mining was involved in this, and it really was. But it wasn't for gold. That word gold was mixed up with another word that means valuable, right? Sustenance is valuable. But they lost their ability to supernaturally manifest anything. And so what they had to do was get men to do things for them. They mined materials to make things, devices, all this other stuff. The same thing they do today. Look at us. We have all this technology, but ask yourself, how has it truly benefited each and every one of us? Just think about that. We can utilize technology. It's not a sin to do or anything, but just ask yourself a question. What has technology truly yielded? Well, let me give you one thing it did. It caused everybody to speed up in their life, and it stressed them out, is what it did.
Yeah.
That's what it did.
Yeah.
It also becomes our second brain, or a replacement almost for the Holy Spirit.
Oh, Mike,
Because
it's replaced our consciousness. We trust Google more than God.
Well, there you go. And guess what? You don't have to wait upon God. You don't have to wait with patience. You just go to Google.
Just go to Google.
And go look it up, right? But see, that's bad, because if we go to Google for everything, we can say we don't trust it all day. But the truth is, we get our information from, it's almost like a person saying, I don't trust NASA scientists. I don't trust anybody. I won't listen to them. Then something blows up in the heavens and you say, what are you doing, Bob? Well, I'm on the NASA website trying to track and see what this was.
Right.
But that's how we do it. Anyway, back to the Middle East again. How do we go there? I don't know.
Well, let's go back to the Pope. Now, the Pope is going to Ur tomorrow with interfaith. He's bringing Muslims, he's bringing Sikhs, and he's bringing Yiddies, and he's bringing minorities, and no Jews. He's bringing lots of Christians, and it's supposed to be a prayer, interfaith prayer for the sons and daughters of Abraham, yet the Jews are not invited. What is he doing at Ur, at this one of the most sacred, quote, sacred locations? And it's not a pyramid, but again, what was it called again, Izzy? I forgot.
A ziggurat.
A ziggurat. And it is like a portal. I mean, is this ancient Babylon? I mean, what's going on, Mike?
That's it. You only get near a ziggurat and speak words of peace to those who follow some of the doctrine of those who worked near that ziggurat. That's for appeasement. See, I have an issue with the compromise thing. My goodness, I hold back so much. I do when it comes to this, but you have a pope who is supposed to stand for Christianity going over there with the folks over there with a very different faith who hate Jesus, right? They demoted Christ into a prophet. That's blatant blasphemy. And he's going over there to amplify blasphemy is what he's doing, because to say that Jesus is simply a prophet is blasphemy. And when you have to know something to blaspheme it, or else it's just speech. Right? Oh. He knows full well what he's doing. But I'll tell you this, you mark my words, because he represents Christ in the eyes of the innocents, he's the one that will cause what happened in the Middle East to happen, because this compromise with Christianity, it's all over the place. It's just all over. I can't even go there, because I'll hop right to the U.S. with the change of culture, where all these problems come from. Really, it's because they've allowed other people to set up their faith in this country. Right?
Yeah.
I do firmly and strongly believe that if a person wants to come to another country, then leave your country behind. Don't bring it with you. Leave it behind, and then come to the country. That means don't bring your faith and demand it be the dominant faith, or be in competition with the faith that established this nation in the first place. That's what needs to go.
Well, now you don't sound like a globalist, Mike. I mean, you're starting to sound like a nationalist. That's not what they're preaching in Europe, and that's definitely not what President Trump was preaching. I mean, he sounds a lot like you do at this moment, and I think I agree with you, because you don't go in and change the country you're entering into. You enter it because you like what they're doing and you want to adapt to it. It's called assimilation. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Right.
Yeah.
That's assimilation, not compromise.
Right. Assimilation.
Not metamorphosis, but assimilation, meaning you can become one of us. If you like us, come be one of us, but we have a faith. So don't come compete with our faith.
Right.
Don't do it. Because this country is supposed to represent Christ in the foundational properties of Christ. Not Muhammad, not Allah, not any of these guys. And so that's a real problem. You have this this issue right now with all this religion. And when somebody says that word God, right, you don't know who they're talking about.
No, I'm confused.
That with Christ.
I'm confused.
I'm not fooled by that. But anyway, that's why I don't fit in.
Well, Mike from around the world's with us, folks. High fives all around. I want to welcome all 7,200 of you with us live. And let me just say, folks, Mike, I'm glad we talked about this with Iraq, the ziggurat. Keep your eye on this tomorrow, guys. A portal may open. And, Mike, when you mentioned the young men of Del Moon, I just wonder if the armies of Gog and Magog are going to be released. This may be a prophecy alert on that. Let me ask you another question, Mike, while we're talking here. Mount Etna, Oregon, Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
6,000 tremors the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I said Mount Etna. I meant Mount Hood. Mount Hood, there in Portland, Oregon. Can you help me understand what's going on there? Is that part of Cascadia subduction zone? Is magma moving? What's going on?
Now, magma is moving, and not only Oregon, Pastor Paul, but not only when you're dealing in that area near Vancouver and Gresham and Salem, all these areas, you have some very ancient tubes. It's tubes all over the place, almost like the East Coast, which has tons of catacombs. But the difference is in Washington, you're dealing with a lot of tubes, and they are full of magma. Now, I can tell you for a fact the land has been changing there. You remember the seals that kept washing up on the coasts?
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
Okay, some of the people who took care of those seals noticed that a lot of those seals had bad burns on them. Bad burns. Some of the pups had burns on them. And they were so afraid to enter back into the water. They didn't tell anybody this. But that implies that right outside of California in that area, you're having some enormous geological changes. And with these earthquakes and with all these different, there are small swells taking place where they shouldn't take place. These volcanoes are ancient. And more and more ancient volcanoes are going to begin to wake up. But this magma ordeal is only going to get worse. We still don't have enough relief points to stop major eruption. Now, listen, I'm talking about major eruptions. For example, I give it a week, and there's going to be tectonic activity. I would say that you're going to have activity in some places that nobody's really looking for, like Montana. Oops, isn't that where everybody ran for protection? They're going to find out that place is not immune. Nebraska down to Oklahoma is going to start having these small earthquakes. It will not be fracking. It's going to be something else. You can detect where the magma is from space. Infrared's very sensitive equipment, but you can tell where it's going. You can tell what it's doing. It's causing brand new channels to form underneath the soils of the earth, right? It is clearly done. It's formed a map, I guess you could say, and it goes around these square areas underneath the earth. Magma is deep within the earth, and it goes around these square areas, right? So something is in the way of the magma pushing that. Anyway, it's quite... it's an eye-opener. At any rate, though, the pressure buildup is very bad. So folks in Saskatchewan, all the way down, if you go down to Saskatchewan and Montana, Wyoming, Yellowstone, I'm not worried about because my biggest worry right now is still with Italy. They're not getting the message. They're not. And if the Pope goes in the Middle East, how many warnings do they need as a Christian, right? Why is it that geology correlates to iniquity every single time? Every single time it correlates to iniquity, right? So in other words, when people when they publicly blaspheme the living God, right? Publicly start to denounce or make go astray those babies in Christ, some geological thing takes place every single time.
Hey, Mike, let's go right now as you're saying this, and that's Revelation 13, folks. Listen to the word blasphemy. It says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw, and notice it's the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, upon his heads the name blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. His feet were the feet of a bear. His mouth is the mouth of a lion. And the dragon, or Lucifer, gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who's able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given to him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Blasphemy, blasphemy, blasphemous, blasphemy. This is an antichrist spirit that's rising in the last day. Is that right, Mike?
It really is. It really is. And you know what, Pastor Paul? I tell you what, I encourage everybody out there to take note of something. Right before the Lord does just one of those mega movements, right before he moves big time upon his people, there's always a moment or a time of duress that seems like duress, a time when things are not going right, when geology is not going right. This is right before. It's almost like the Lord is showing us, look, if I take my mercy away from this place, look what happens. Or if I take my grace away from this place, look what happens. And we can expect all things we have seen to be multiplied this year. The summer is going to be unbearable. Some of the floods are going to be, they're just going to wreck people's homes and everything else. And I know that some people, especially when we talk next Thursday, people are going to be nervous about such things because it seems like these things keep pace with the Thursday broadcast anyway, but they're going to be nervous about some things. And if they don't want to be nervous, if they really want to protect their families, this is a time when clear spiritual warnings are going out. Spiritual warnings are not designed so that people of the world see them. They're for us. We're the ones that take notice of earthquakes, volcanoes, and things of that nature. It's not for those who don't believe. It's for those who believe. If we take notice and make sure that we stand on Christ, for real this time, he will protect us just like Daniel and lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. I know I've been there. Pastor Paul should have been shot in a certain place several times. It hit everybody but me. That's impossible. That's impossible.
Right.
And then it happened again. I've been wounded a few times, yes. But I'm telling you what the Lord can do. And he always gives us this period where he starts showing us what happens with no grace. And it looks like we're in that period now. I'll tell you this also. There's some groups in America that are contemplating tonight how to do some very devious things. We're not talking about Republicans. We're not talking about even those who went up to the Capitol building, because it's not them. But they want to do something else. I can almost guarantee you that policies are going to be forced to change. The environment is going to look quite spooky to people, right? There's going to be a
die in March of 2020 in China. You told us that we were going to lose 200,000 to 300,000 people in 2020 from COVID. Now you're telling me we're going to see a resurgence of COVID and a lot of people, death is going to happen. So is there a new strain? Is there something new been released on the earth? Is there intel that you have that we need to be prepared for?
I wouldn't call it new. I'll say this. COVID-19 is a test. It's a gateway to something else. And all those folks, it would pay everybody. Don't make a decision to save your own skins. Make a wise decision so you can be there to help out somebody else. There will be a resurgence of COVID-19, but it will not be COVID-19. Just remember that. That's all I can say about it. It's going to be a resurgence of COVID-19, but it will not be COVID-19. It's going to have devastating effects. It will. And if folks really want their families safe, they have to right now they really have to dig in and obey the Lord. And what I mean by that, don't put yourself on this worldly radar. Don't do it, the worldly radar, but stand on the principles of Christ. It's easy for a man to hit somebody. It's easy for a man to do violent things. It is not so easy to stand firm on the word and trust in the Lord and his outcome for things, because all of us are going to need the wisdom and guidance of the Holy Spirit in the weeks to come. We're going to need it.
Mike, so now you've said something just before God does something major, and I believe that there's a major, major, major revival. The great harvest that the Bible talks about in the book of Revelation, when the angel comes and thrusts in his sickle and he harvests the fruit of the earth. The Bible talks about it in Joel 2 when it talks about the former and the latter rain. Jesus said, even in the end times, he said, look, you'll look on the fields, they're white already for harvest. Pray for the Lord of the harvest to send forth more laborers in the vineyard. Do you see this major revival about to break loose in the midst of all this chaos and just literal confusion on the planet? What do you think, Mike?
I do, Pastor Paul, and also I see it happening in a way that no one has seen it before. I mean, no one. What I'm talking about here is, can you imagine a time when people let down everything, every falsehood we carried, everything, just lay it all down, but that we're filled with the power of the Holy Spirit on the face of the earth? Can you imagine a group of Christians standing as a witness to the authority of Christ in the earth that would make a proclamation, and that thing start taking place right away? Not because they're trying to be seen on television, not because of any of those reasons, but because they truly have become the sons of the living God through Christ right here on this earth before he ever gets here. True ambassadors to Christ. And that means an ambassador to his authority.
Folks, it's coming.
I believe that time is coming. And Pastor Paul, I believe that right now people are being marked as they're going to be in that crowd or they're going to be ousted from that crowd. I believe that we're being evaluated right now to see where our loyalties truly lie in this time, and to see if we're going to trust him in these things that are happening right now. I believe that's happening because right before in the Bible, before he does these major moves, this same thing happens. God's people it's almost like they get in this point where they feel weakened. Things are not quite working out. It looks threatening all the way around them. And then the people are trying to get them to join into this and to join into that. But those Christians who stand firm on Christ Jesus and they say, I'm not moving from the Lord, they're going to be the recipients of his authority. Because doesn't it say the Holy Ghost is reserved for those who obey the Lord?
Oh, so, absolutely. And you're right. Every time there was a big move. For instance, when Moses took the children of Israel out of Egypt, man, they were under some of the worst oppression. They had to make bricks without straw. They doubled the quota. Right. The plagues of Egypt came.
That's right.
You know, when Moses stood at the Red Sea and the people began to murmur and complain, and there's Pharaoh was coming on his back. That's at the moment when God said, hey, stand still. Yeah. Fear not, and see the salvation of the Lord. We cannot walk in fear. We have to walk in faith, and I think that's what I hear you saying. This is the moment we're going to separate the men from the boys. Amen. We're going to find out who are the men from the boys. And folks, don't cave now. Don't go. Look, the Methodist Church is getting ready to split right now. They're getting ready to split right now over a simple issue that's so simple that a child can understand it in the Bible. And yet the largest Protestant denomination in this nation will split over marriage and the definition of it. Folks, we're in the last days. They're calling evil good and good evil. Mike, you know it.
Okay, sure are, Pastor Paul.
So next week.
Yes,
Next week. Nervous warnings.
Yep.
We'll see you next Thursday, Lord willing.
Pastor Paul. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, Mike, brother. Thank you so much, brother. Good word. Amen. Mike around the world, folks.